information gathering or enumeration or reconnaissance, whichever suits you best. Depends upon what spy movies you've seen. In any event, they all define the same concept, that this phase is the initial stage of penetration testing lifecycle. So reconnaissance should be one of the most critical aspects of a successful penetration test for you. This phase involves identification of various software and services running on the target. Now, I'm serious here. The first step for you to take while penetration testing is to figure out which particular version of the software is running on the target. Then you will have a wealth of intelligence about your target by following comprehensive information gathering and enumeration. And that's how you decide specifically which attack is good for you to compromise the system. Now, you may be tempted to immediately launch an automated tool. However, I really do think that these attempts are less likely to help you to compromise a system. Failing in this phase might waste your time and also makes you go around attacking machines randomly. So this isn't something that's good, and believe me, you don't want to do it. So the MSF has enumeration capabilities, and it provides you with many auxiliary modules for performing information gathering. So in order to do that, in this upcoming section, I will be exploring a variety of auxiliary modules within the MSF, so pay attention. And what I'm going to do is enumerate the services that use various protocols, such as TCP, UDP, FTP, SMB, SMTP, HTTP, SSH, and a bunch of others. SMB, which stands for Server Message Block, is a protocol for sharing files, printers, serial ports, and communications abstractions such as named pipes and mail slots between computers. In addition to that, Samba is a freely available SMB server for Unix. It's an implementation of SMB for Unix-like systems. SMB can run directly over TCP ports 137, 139, 445, or on UDP ports 137 and 138. Now, some versions of SMB protocol has known vulnerabilities, so you should enumerate the SMB services. Now let's step back into the lab to use MSF modules for SMB. All right, so you have made a scan over Metasploitable 2 and 3. To check to see if the SMB port is open, type the services command with a P parameter and SMB port numbers 139 and 445. And the ports are open on both machines. MSF has a meaningful directory structure, so you can find SMB-related auxiliary scanners under this directory. You're not going to need to write every word. Just hit the tab button to complete the commands. Now, the basic logic behind the enumeration is service banner and version detection. So that means I will first run the SMB version module, show options, and set our hosts to our target's IP addresses. And then you can run the module. That module executed very quickly. But look at that, though. It does bring some really good information about the targets. So as you can see, 10.10.2.10 is a Windows Server 2008 R2 Standard Service Pack 1, which is Metasploitable 3. Now, on the other hand, Metasploitable 2 has Samba. Now, why is the version detection important? I hear you saying and scratching your head. Well, let's have a look at the Samba version. This version of Samba has a vulnerability. Even Metasploit has an exploit for this. So, I think you get the point. But just one more point here. Metasploit saves this information to improve your penetration tests. So let's type hosts as our command with C as the parameter. Now you see, Windows 7 changed to Windows 2008. So now let's go with another module. You can try all the others, but I'm going to choose SMB MS1710, show the options, set the rhosts variable, and run the module. And it looks like Metasploitable 3 is vulnerable to MS 17 through 10. So let's Google this vulnerability, shall we? There are many topics about this vulnerability, and Metasploit has an exploit module for that particular vulnerability. So that's a good way, I think, to illustrate how enumeration gives you better results. So make a note of this vulnerability. You're going to need it later. Okay, so let's go back to the MSF console. All right, so this is the last one. This is the SMB login module. I will immediately set our hosts. Now I'll need a dictionary file to brute force. So in a new tab, I will create one. For this, you can use the Cool tool. It's really simple and very handy. D for how deeper to crawl a target page, and M for minimum character numbers for words in the dictionary, and then the name of the output file. So here I'm going to use the address of the GitHub page of Metasploitable 3 as the target page that Cool will derive the words from. So this process can take way too much time, but I'm going to stop it here because the dictionary file has already been created. So let's go back to the MSF console and use it. I'll set the SMB user to Vagrant, set the pass file to that dictionary file, and then run the module. So I'm going to interrupt the execution. Did you see at the beginning of the output, did you notice the green color? That's because you need to enter the pair vagrant, vagrant. Okay, so that's what we need. So make a note of that. Now, SMB reveal is the valuable information that you get. MySQL is one of the most used databases, and it's almost in every network, either for production or for development purposes. Out-of-date or poorly configured MySQL installations may allow you to get in the system. So, your first step is to discover the version. MSF has a couple of modules for MySQL. So let's have a look at them and gather information from the MySQL server in order. So do you remember, as I do, that there are MySQL databases in the result of the db nmap command? So then how do you view it? I can view it by going to Services, P3306, entering that command. And sure enough, there they are. So there are some useful auxiliaries in Metasploit for MySQL. And you can search it like that. So here they are. And like always, I will start with version enumeration, although Nmap already did it. Show the options. Just going to set our hosts as my variable. Show options, and run. Yeah, it's executed quickly, and the result is the same as the db nmap command. So check this out. Now I'm going to use the MySQL login module. Show the options, and the rhosts value comes up globally. And there are some file variables, as you can see. And I'll set blank passwords to true. So the module will try blank passwords also. So I'm going to start a brute force in just a little bit, but I first need to create a dictionary file specialized for MySQL. And to accomplish this, I'll search on the internet for a reasonable dictionary file, or you can also create one by yourself like we did earlier. But I just want to use the related words like this. So here in the second row, there's a GitHub page. And under default credentials, you will see a MySQL default password file. So I'm going to copy that and say thank you to the owner of the page. Okay, so I'll save it in a file in Kali. And I'll save it here in the desktop. I think I did that before. So let's go back to the MSF console. Set the user pass file variable to the file that you've just created. Okay? Then run. And I think you can catch some user password pairs. So you should make a note of this finding because you will need to use this one later. Okay, so this means that you're really starting to discover and understand your target system. Let's get into the next one. Now, as you probably already know, File Transfer Protocol, or FTP, is used for the transfer of files between a client and a server using port 21. Poorly configured FTP servers can be a good foothold. So, you can run some MSF modules to enumerate FTP servers and gain some important information such as software version, banner info, and all that. Aside from this, the FTP servers authenticate users with a clear text sign-in mechanism. Moreover, it can sometimes allow anonymous login. So why don't we enumerate an FTP service? So let's have a look and see which hosts have FTP services. All right, so both of them have. But sometimes administrators use different ports for the services. So let's try a search with the S parameter. And just like that, you can find all the FTP servers that db nmap command discovers. And yeah, as you see here, there's an FTP service running on port 2121. And then you'll get this list if you search for FTP auxiliaries. And I'll just use these ones here. Use auxiliary scanner, FTP, and FT version module. Show options. Nothing set. So let's run the module. And there's the results. Now you can do the same process for every FTP port, but here's an important point. If you get the version, look for vulnerabilities on the internet or somewhere else. So what I'll do is I'll copy and then search Google or whatever your favorite search engine is. And you see VS FTP has a vulnerability for this particular version. And even Metasploit has a module for this. So make a note of that because you will use it later. Oh, and by the way, this is a lab environment, remember, but the logic is 100% the same as in any real penetration testing. So I'll use another module, FTP login, showing options, and here are the file variables. So I'm going to allow blank passwords and username as password. And here I'll set user pass file to my FTP dictionary file. And I'll create this list from the same address that I did for MySQL. All right. Run the module. And I think you'll probably find one pair. So make a note of that too. Now, one more module. Some FTP modules allow for anonymous logins. So when you perform a vulnerability scan, you probably are going to get this finding. But you can quickly check to see if any of the discovered FTP services allows this. That's why this module is so handy. Show options. Okay, so I'll need to configure nothing, so I'll just run the module. And the result comes up pretty quickly. So yeah, you can connect this FTP service on Metasploitable 2 anonymously. So now that we got the hang of that, let's enumerate some other services. SSH stands for Secure Shell and works on port 22. It helps administrators make operations over an encrypted channel. Now, although SSH might come in handy when you want to access remote systems, sometimes, but not so often, but it's good to be aware of it, SSH itself can have some configuration vulnerabilities. So let me just quickly show you an example of a poorly configured SSH server. So first, let's search for SSH auxiliaries. There aren't too many modules. And I'll follow the same sequence that I did in the previous videos. And I'll try to discover the version, the users. So I will pick SSH version as my first module. Show the options. Now, because I set the rhosts variable as global, the value is automatically assigned. And there's nothing changed here, so let's run the module. And here's the result. So it contains more details on the SSH services on both machines. You should also make a note of that. Now, I don't want to look for vulnerabilities for these versions, but you can if you want to, and test them in the lab environments if you find any. So, okay then, I'm going to use SSH login as my next module. Show options. And I will allow the user name as password and accept blank passwords. Now, I won't create a dictionary file again. So I'm going to use the file that I created for FTP. And I don't think we need anything more. So let's run the module. Now, here I get a username password pair, vagrant, vagrant. Remember that also. And then Metasploit automatically opens a session for us on port 22. So now we can interact with that session. So now let's enumerate the next service. HTTP is a stateless application layer protocol. Generally uses TCP port 80 and exchanges data over the World Wide Web. You can fingerprint the HTTP service and gain a whole lot of information about the target system. To accomplish this, MSF has some HTTP modules. Now, besides MSF modules enumerating the HTTP service information, they will also help you looking at backup files on the web server, listing directories, checking the validity of SSL certificates presenting on the web server. But mainly, reconnaissance-related auxiliary modules will be listed under the Auxiliary Scanner HTTP. And one more thing about the ports is that HTTP uses 80, and when it comes as HTTPS, it uses port 443. But both ports are not mandatory. Why is that, you ask? Well, administrators can easily change the port that the web application is served on. So be careful. You may see a web app serving on port 6500. That's nothing new for a pen tester. So let's jump into a practice session. So I think you probably have many HTTP services running on your targets. So let's view them using the services command. And you see there are a lot of HTTP services. And let's have a look at the port numbers. In the real world, it is the same. But here, there are only HTTP services, right? So I can also look for HTTP with SSL, like this. There, another port number comes up. And just like I did before, I will search for HTTP-related auxiliaries. Whoa, okay, so there are too many modules. Some of them are for applications that use HTTP or HTTPS. So it's kind of hard to find some of the core modules for HTTP itself. So why don't we make a short list? That's going to be a handy shortcut for you to start with enumerating HTTP. So let's go back to services. Okay, so now I want to show you something. Look what you have here, a web dev service. Now, this might look kind of old school to you, but you can see in the local networks. This is Metasploitable 3. A web dev service is also available on Metasploitable 2. So you can use all these modules in the lab to improve your skills, but I'll intentionally choose HTTP put module. Show me the options. Right, so this module will use HTTP put as the method to test if the web server allows for uploading a junk file. But the module wants a path variable. So I can try every possible path on the server. Let's try to find a reasonable path. So at this point, I'll use another module, crawler, and then this module will crawl pages and list the paths on the server. Show me the options. And I'll quickly set the variables. Our port to 8585. All right, so let's check. And run the module. So as it finishes up, you have discovered a few paths. And here, the uploads path probably is what you were looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'll use this path, and I'll turn back to the HTTP put module. Show the options again. Just going to set our hosts as my variable. Set path to uploads. Everything looks good. So let's run the module. And it happens very quickly. There it is. You're successful. So now you can upload a malicious file to the web server and call this file to get a session on the server. So if you follow the link, you will get this page. And this proves that one can easily upload something to the server. That is what a vulnerability is. The Simple Network Management Protocol, SNMP, is used to query network devices for information such as bandwidth utilization, collision rates, and a whole lot of other information. But it doesn't only provide network management and monitoring capabilities, but it's also capable of changing the configurations on the host, allowing the remote management of the network device. Yes, I can tell this gets you excited, huh? My young apprentice. And you are right. So SNMP servers can offer considerable information for penetration testers to perform reconnaissance on a specific system. You may also see SNMP installations on some operating systems to specify information such as CPU utilization, free memory, and so on. It's often automatically installed on many network devices with public in the read string and private in the write string. On Windows-based devices by poorly configured SNMP, you can extract patch levels, running services, usernames, uptime, routes, and, well, so much information that it'll totally level up the penetration test for you. So let's use the services command to search for SNMP service. And yes, indeed, you only have to open the SNMP port on Metasploitable 3. The version is 1. SNMP version 1 and version 2 both have proven security flaws. But SNMP version 3 is improved with encryption as well as better check mechanisms. But anyway, I'll search for SNMP auxiliaries. And this time, I'm going to start with SNMP Enum. Show me the options. Oh, and by the way, the community strings are essentially passwords that are used to read or write information to a device. So if the SNMP version is right, and you guess the community strings, the SNMP itself can allow anything from excessive information disclosure to full system compromise. Let me give you an example. If you get the read-write SNMP community string for a Cisco router, you can download, modify, and upload the configuration to the router with a backdoor. So here, I'm not going to change the community variable. I will just set the port to 161. And yeah, everything looks quite good. Now I'll run the module. So as you can see, SNMP brings all the information about the target, Metasploitable 3, from running applications to network interfaces, service information, device information, user enumeration, nearly everything about the target. SMTP serves on port 25, and it's used for sending and receiving emails. So this service has two interesting commands that reveal information about the mail server users. They are EXPN and VRFY. There are numerous ways to get names with these commands, but let's go and check out the MSF auxiliaries. So these auxiliary modules probe the SMTP server on the target for the version and then list the SMTP server users. So you have a SMTP port open on Metasploitable 2. Services, SMTP, and here's the info. SMTP verify, that's a command that helps you to check for users. And before using any module, I want to show you that from the MSF console tray, you can connect SMTP service on Metasploitable 2. Telnet 10.10.2.10.25, and the connection's established. So, verify admin. There is no admin. Verify Metasploit. Okay, no user with that name. Verify MSF admin. Okay, yes, so I found one username. Verify root. Yeah, second username. Verify administrator. Okay, no user with that name. Verify sys. Another correct username. I think you get the point. because without any vulnerability, you get usernames. Exit Telnet. Oops, quit Telnet. Okay, so as always, search for SMTP auxiliaries. And first, pick SMTP version, show options. Okay, so I will set our hosts to 10.10.2.14 and run the module. So this is the SMTP service banner. Now let's pick another module. SMTP Enum. Show options. And I will very quickly set our hosts. So let me check if everything is fine with all the variables. Okay, so set threads to 10 and run the module. Okay, so I think I have a problem with module execution. Did you catch it? Because it lasts a whole lot longer than it ought to. So let's set threads 1 again and run the module. And this time it works. And here are the SMTP users. So make a note of these users. You're going to be able to use them in the brute force dictionaries. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to perform DNS enumeration with Nmap. So first of all, of course, what is DNS enumeration? In fact, what is DNS? Good question, so I'll answer them. So DNS, the domain name system, works at the application layer level of the OSI model. DNS is a system, and it's used to convert a computer's host name into an IP address on the internet. For example, if a computer needs to communicate with the web server hackeracademy.uk, your computer needs the IP address of the web server hackeracademy.uk. It is the job of the DNS to convert the host name to the IP address of the web server. DNS uses both UDP and TCP. Now, of course, if you need more information about this, you can just visit our DNS lesson in section 2. So DNS enumeration, it's one of the most popular discovery tasks available to create a profile of your target. It's the act of detecting and enumerating all possible DNS records from a particular domain name. This includes host names, DNS record names, DNS record types, TTLs, IP addresses, and a little bit more, depending upon how much information that you're looking for. So after DNS enumeration is complete, unauthenticated users can then use this information to observe internal network records and obtain useful DNS information that allows the attacker to access a complete DNS map. Now, of course, there are many ways to perform DNS enumeration. Nmap has multiple scripts for DNS enumeration, as you can see here. These scripts will try to get information in other ways as well. So in this lesson, we are going to use DNS brute as well as DNS zone transfer scripts. So let's have a look at these scripts and how do they work? Well, first, the DNS brute will attempt to enumerate DNS host names by brute force, right? Guessing of common subdomains. Second, zone transfer. Okay, hold on. What is DNS zone transfer? So DNS zone transfer, it's also sometimes known by the inducing DNS query type AXFR. These are requests for a zone transfer. In other words, it's a type of DNS transaction. It's one of the many mechanisms available for administrators to replicate DNS databases across a set of DNS servers. A zone transfer script sends a request, zone transfer query, to a DNS server.
The area to be queried is determined by examining the name given on the command line, the host name of the DNS server, or it can be specified with the script argument DNS_zone_transfer.domain. If the query is successful, all domains and domain types are returned with common type-specific data. So let's try these scripts. Open up Kali Linux in VirtualBox. Enter username and password. Open terminal. Enter sudo su dash. So give you root permissions. Enter the root password. Now in this test, we are going to use zonetransfer.me for DNS enumeration because this website is developed just for you to get some experience regarding security problems related to DNS zone transfer. All right. So first we'll try the DNS brute script. So write Nmap-P53 for specifying the port because DNS works on port 53. And then the script name, DNS-brute. So we'll need to specify the domain name because we want to get DNS information about zonetransfer.me. So we'll add the domain argument to the command. And the target DNS server, to find the DNS server of the target, you can use the domain information groper tool. So it's a powerful command line tool for querying DNS name servers. And look at that. You can see that the script shows us the subdomain names. Second, DNS zone transfer script. Write Nmap-P53 for specifying the port and selecting the script name DNS-zone-transfer. And we'll need to specify the domain name, so we need an argument. Right? /script -args DNS-zone-transfer.domain zonetransfer.me and the target DNS server. So as you can see, the script shows us the methods, the descriptions, as well as the DNS records about the domain. In this lesson, we will learn how to perform HTTP enumeration with Nmap. So first of all, wait, what? Did you say HTTP enumeration? Yeah, because HTTP enumeration is gathering information from websites and web applications. As the number of web applications on the web server increases, the security vulnerabilities have increased as much, right? So in other words, there's many scripts in the Nmap script engine that can be used in many different applications. And as you can see, if we list all the HTTP scripts, there are plenty of scripts in Nmap script engine to display many vulnerabilities. Okay, so the script that you will use will change according to the technology that you're going to be facing. So for now, we're going to enumerate information from the target. We'll not try to exploit the target. So in this lesson, we're just going to use the HTTP enum script. So HTTP enum is a script that enumerates directories used by popular web apps and servers. So let's go ahead and try this script. So in this test, we are going to use Metasploitable 2 for the HTTP enum script. So first we'll run the Metasploitable 2 machine and we'll open Kali Linux in VirtualBox, username and password. Open terminal. Enter sudo su dash for root permissions. Enter the root password. Write Nmap -P80, and that'll specify the port, /script, HTTP-enum, and the target IP address. So my Metasploitable 2 machine IP address is 10.0.3.5. Okay, good. So now, as you can see here, we've got the paths of the files and the file names. Normally, if we access the website, you'll be able to see the name of the files on the server. But with a script, we can see more files that cannot be seen directly. So with hidden directories, you can access some hidden information like the Apache version or admin login page and all kinds of stuff. So you understand vulnerability. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to perform MySQL enumeration with Nmap. So first of all, what is MySQL, and then what is MySQL enumeration? Well, I'm sure you might have heard of it, but let me just tell you that MySQL is one of the most popular open source relational database management systems. And it has emerged as the relational database. MySQL is a freely available database system. However, there are a few paid versions where you can use more advanced functions. It's really easy to use compared to other database software like MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle Database, and so on. So MySQL can run on multiple platforms such as Linux, Windows, and Mac, and an information schema to define and manage your metadata. MySQL runs on port 3306 by default. So then expanding that, MySQL enumeration is going to be getting information about the database, the users, and what kind of knowledge that you are looking for, right? So in this lesson, we're going to use the Metasploitable 2 machine for MySQL enumeration, and we're going to gather as much information as possible from the MySQL server. So first, we'll list out the various Nmap scripts that are available to us regarding MySQL. Cool. So as you can see, we've got a few scripts, and each of them are slightly different. So scripts will depend on the information that you have. So in this lesson, we're going to look at MySQL-enum and MySQL-info. Now, if we do talk about some other scripts, MySQL-databases, for instance, this lists out the tables of databases. And another interesting one is the MySQL-empty-password. It's basically trying to find users that don't happen to have a password. What sort of user would that be? You'd be surprised. So let's try these two scripts and talk about them as we go. First, we'll run the Metasploitable 2 machine. Open Kali Linux and VirtualBox. Enter username and password. Open terminal. Enter sudo su- for root permissions. Enter the root password. All right, so let's start with the first script, which is MySQL info. So this script will show us basic information about the MySQL server. So we'll write nmap -p3306. That'll specify the port address. /script for choosing the script MySQL-info. And the target IP address, which is the Metasploitable 2 machine. All right, so as you can see, it'll give us this information regarding the MySQL server. It gives us the protocol version of the MySQL server. So you see that this can be very performative for vulnerability analysis. It also gives us the capabilities listed here. Supports authentication and transactions, and it gives us salt. So it's very useful information when you're dealing with passwords. So let's try the second script, which is going to be MySQL-enum. And again, we'll write Nmap -P3306 to specify the port address, /script to choose the script MySQL-enum, and the target IP address. Now, it'll try to perform valid user enumeration against MySQL server using a bug that's been discovered. So this script performs like a brute force. The difference between the MySQL brute and MySQL enum is MySQL enum tries to log in using a vulnerability. All right, so in this lesson, we've learned how we can gather information from MySQL using Nmap. So in this lesson, we are going to learn how to perform SMB enumeration with Nmap. What is SMB? Well, SMB stands for Server Message Block. It's a protocol for sharing resources like files and printers. In general, any resource on a server. So it runs on port 445 or port 139 by default, depending on the server. It's natively available in Windows, so Windows users don't need to configure anything extra, just besides the basic setup. In Linux, however, it's a little different. In order to make it work in Linux, you've got to install a Samba server because Linux natively does not use SMB protocol. So then, how can we enumerate SMB? Well, there are a couple of ways that we can do it. The first obvious flaw is using default credentials or easily guessable and sometimes even no authentication for access to important resources on the server. The second flaw is the Samba server itself. Samba servers are notorious for being tremendously insecure. So then what scripts does Nmap provide to us? Well, we're going to list all the scripts about SMB. And as you can see, there are a few scripts in NSE. So in this lesson, we are going to perform enumeration Metasploitable 2 machine for SMB protocols, SMB enum shares, and SMB OS discovery. So let's go ahead and try these scripts. So first, let's run the Metasploitable 2 machine. Open the Kali Linux in VirtualBox. Enter username and password. Open terminal. Enter sudo sudo- for root permissions. Enter the root password. Okay, so let's start with the first script, which happens to be SMB protocol script. So this script will show us basic information about the SMB. So write Nmap -P445 so that we can specify the port, and /script for choosing script SMB-protocols. And of course, the target IP address. And what we're looking at here, the server is running NTLM. And this is the version, which is SMB version 1. So it's dangerous by default. So again, we've got to say that this gives us information on how we can act on it, what kinds of exploits that we can run. So this script gives us that initial idea. Now the second script is SMB OS discovery. So write Nmap -P445 to specify the port address. /script for choosing the script SMB-OS-discovery and the target IP address. Now this script gives us information about the operating system that's running on the target machine. The server is running Samba, and here is the computer name. The third script is SMB Enum Shares -P445 for specifying the port address, --script for choosing script, SMB-enum-shares, as well as the target IP address. So this script lists out all the shares active on the target. It also lists out permissions as to whether or not we can access those shares remotely or directly with or without credentials. So as you can see, the script lists out the shares that we can have access to. What do you think? It's a virtual gold mine. So in this lesson, we learned what SMB is and how we can perform SMB enumeration. So in this lesson, we're going to learn how to perform SNMP enumeration with Nmap. What is SNMP, you might say? Well, SNMP is also known as Simple Network Management Protocol. And as the name suggests, it is a simple application layer protocol that helps a network administrator while managing the network. So it's by using SNMP and its basic information, such as the temperature of the devices on the network, such as the router, the switch, the access server, the bridge, and even the computer, and the users connected to the device, the internet connection speed, device operating time, all of this info can be obtained. So SNMP is running on port 161 by default. So SNMP enumeration, what's that? Well, the SNMP enumeration process enumerates user accounts as well as the devices on a target system using the SNMP. So SNMP consists of a manager and an agent. Agents are embedded on every network device, and the manager is installed on a separate computer. So attackers enumerate SNMP to extract information about network resources such as hosts, routers, devices, shares, and all that, as well as network information such as ARP tables, routing tables, traffic, just about everything you can think of. So why don't we go ahead and list out the various Nmap scripts that are available to us regarding this SNMP. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a few scripts, and each of them are slightly different. Scripts will depend on the information that you have, but in this particular lesson, we are going to look at SNMP processes, SNMP netstat, and SNMP interfaces, as well as SNMP sys description. All right, so let's get started. We'll try these 4 scripts and then we'll talk about them. In this lesson, we are going to test the IE8 Windows 7 machine that the SNMP service is running. So we'll first run the IE8 Windows 7 machine, open Kali Linux and VirtualBox, enter username and password, open the terminal, enter sudo sudo for root permissions, and a root password. So let's start with the first script, which is the SNMP processes script. This script attempts to enumerate running processes through SNMP. So we'll write nmap -su for UDP scan, -P161 to specify the port address, and --script SNMP processes for choosing the script, and the target IP address, which is 10.0.3.7 on my Windows 7 machine. Okay, so as you can see, the script lists out the running processes through SNMP. The second script is SNMP netstat. The script attempts to query SNMP for a netstat like the output. The script can be used to identify and automatically add new targets to the scan by supplying the new target script argument. Write nmap.su for UDP scan, -p161 for specifying the port address, --script SNMP-netstat for choosing script, and the target IP address, which is 10.0.3.7 on my Windows 7 machine. Cool. So what you're looking at is the script showing us the active netstat output. The SNMP netstat shows the values of different network-related data obtained via the SNMP protocol from a remote system. The third script is SNMP interfaces. The script attempts to enumerate network interfaces through SNMP. The script can also be run during Nmap's pre-scanning phase, and it can attempt to add the SNMP server interface addresses to the target list. That's pretty cool. So write Nmap, S, of course, capital U, for UDP scan, -p161 for specifying the port address, --script SNMP-interfaces for choosing a script, and the target IP address, which is 10.0.3.7 on my Windows 7 machine. So as you can see, the script shows this information on the network interfaces on the host, like MAC address, type of card, traffic status. Oh boy. So the fourth and last script is snmp.sysdescript, or DESCR. So the script attempts to extract system information from an SNMP service. So we'll write nmap-s capital U for UDP scan, -p161 to specify the port address, --script SNMP-SYS-DESCR for choosing a script, and of course the target IP address, which is 10.0.3.7 on my Windows 7 machine. So as you can see, with the script, we can see the system uptime, the MAC address, software version of the SNMP service, as well as the hardware type. All right, so there you go. We've learned what SNMP is and how we can enumerate it.